Hello, team, and welcome to the latest installment of the Socially Constructed podcast. This time, we've got a real treat because I have got the ever impressive Kaarle McCulloch talking to us. Now, I have to actually read my list of impressive qualifications and experience that Kaarle has had, and the reason why she's joining us today. So Kaarle is the National Women's Sprint Coach for the Aussie Lady Cyclist. You can correct me if that's incorrect in a moment. She is also a 4-time world champion in team sprints in cycling, 3 times gold medalist at the Commonwealth Games, and she has also podiumed at the Olympics, where she got an impressive bronze. So she's got this really incredible background as a high performance athlete. And then she is also one of the best women high performance coaches as well. Kaarle, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad to have you here, Carls. I have had the privilege of knowing and working with Kaarle for a little while now. And I'm always really impressed with the work that you do. I would love it if you would tell me a little bit more about your story and your journey into high performance coaching.
Yeah, so I think probably the place to start is the fact that all my family are teachers, and I've got a pretty strong coaching philosophy that's embedded in teaching excellence and connection. And I think that coaching, just generally as a concept, I guess, has come quite easily to me because of the fact that I've grown up in a family of teachers, and I really believe that teachers are coaches and coaches are teachers. So my mum's a teacher, my stepfather's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, and my sister is also a high performance netball coach, having captained the New South Wales Sydney Swifts a few years ago as well. So in terms of like our family, like we live, I guess, for helping people learn things and to create environments so people can sort of reach their potential. I think that I started to think about being a coach probably halfway through my career as an athlete. In the early parts of my career as an athlete, I was probably labeled as being quite a difficult athlete because I would always ask lots of questions why. Like I really wanted to deeply understand why we were doing things. I really found it hard to buy into programs if I didn't understand or if it didn't make any sense. And then as coaching sort of evolved over the last sort of 15 years, and coaches probably started to do a little bit more work in like how to become a better coach, I think it became more accepting to have athletes be involved in the process and ask why. So probably around 2016, which is the Rio Olympics, I started to like think about coaching, and I started mentoring some younger women in a pathway while I was still an athlete, writing some programs for athletes as well who didn't have access to support or any coaches. And then I retired from my career in November 2021 post the Tokyo Olympics, and there was a job going in Great Britain. And I had a couple of people say to me, you should really try for that job. And I thought, this is the head coach role of the Great British Cycling Team, which is to date the most successful Olympic program in the world. And I was like, if I get an interview, I'll be stoked. And I wasn't really expecting anything more. And then as I went through the process of preparing for the interview and I even got to the second stage, I realized, no, you know what, actually, I think I could really do this job quite well. And I did the second part of the interview, and the next day I got the call up and said, yeah, we want to give you the job. So I had been a few months retired from being an athlete, and then all of a sudden had this great opportunity to go and be a part of the most successful Olympic program in the world. So, I guess that process.
But can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, Carls. I just wanted to say there, but I wanted to add that from what I had researched and what I had heard, when it comes to the women's sprint squad, they hadn't qualified since 2012. And you went in and you absolutely turned that team around within a matter of months. And they went on to be massively successful off the back of your work. And so much so that I had another Olympian friend. Obviously, you know this conversation. And when I said that I knew you, she fangirled so hard because your reputation as a high performance coach was exceptional, and it had just ripped through all of the Olympians who trained out of Manchester, that you were like second to none, leading, and the way that you actually developed a team was exceptional.
Well, that's very nice feedback. And I think, yeah, like I stepped into that role with the women, and yeah, you're right. The women's Great British Cycling team, they actually gave themselves a little bit of a motto, and it was called. They said that they were the chink in the Britain's armor, because all the other programs in the cycling program had been so much more successful than them since Victoria Pendleton had retired and Becky James had retired. So I went into this group of women who had, a fair bit of, I'd probably say, like trauma around that. They had some poor experiences with some previous like coaching styles, and just really felt like they just weren't good enough. I'd like to take like all the credit for their success, but in reflecting on coming on and doing this podcast, one of the things that I reflected on was one of the reasons why I think that team went on to be quite successful, and why we had like a shift quite quickly, is that even before I touched down in Great Britain, I was doing some work from afar from Australia while I was waiting for my visa and things like that. And in getting to know the girls and having conversations with them, I sort of had like 3 action points of things I really wanted to try and influence straight up. And when I landed and I met with the team psychologist at that time, Richard Hampson, he had given me, like, he had done his own research into what he thought that the women needed. And he had 4 action items, and 3 of them were the things that I already thought. So I knew straight away that A, I had a really
Amazing.
great support team behind me, and then B, that I was on the right track of the things that I think I needed to shift. And none of those things, by the way, were the physical things. And I think there's this myth around high performance coaching that it's all about like the physical training that you're prescribing for the athlete, which is important, but it's actually how you create the environment, how you set the environment up, how you challenge people in that environment, how you how you support them along the way, how you help them to have an understanding of who they are away from cycling. And so a lot of the stuff that I did was just really simple
Yes.
stuff in helping them understand who they were and what their potentials might be. And we just got on a roll. And yeah, you're right. We had a world championship medals, we had a world champion, and then the team ended up going on to an Olympic gold in Paris, which was fantastic.
Amazing. I mean, Carl's are just insane. And that approach that you take to your teams is one of the things that I always loved about you. I remember the first time we had a conversation, and you were just obsessed about like the intricacies of human behavior. And like it lit you up. We were taught, I think I was yapping your ear off, but you were like so invested in like what's that small difference that makes the difference holistically to the person. And every time you talk, you're always like, you think in systems. So you'll be telling me, well, I can see when you think about coaching and you think about development, you'll be like, well, we've got to ensure that the home environment is good, and that when they come into work they have like a lack of like cognitive overload so that they can focus. And it's basically, how are we putting them into optimized recovery so that when we like mentally, physically and full bodied, so that when we need to, they have the capacities to be able to like drop their stories and then access the good stuff. um and how does that compare to traditional coaching, the coaching that
Yeah.
you received?
Yeah, like I mean, I think I was really lucky in my career as an athlete to have like several different styles of coaching, and I've always one of the questions I got asked often as an athlete is like, who's your role model? And my answer to that was always like, I don't have a role model, because how I sort of like go about this stuff is I think I'm quite perceptive. I listen and I look at and I watch people, and I try and take like what I think is the best parts of what anybody can bring, even if they're a person that might not necessarily like for whatever reason or agree with how they're going about things. They've always can teach you something. And so I try and take on what I've learned from them and put it in my own way that I think could help benefit whatever I'm doing. So even though I would say like maybe some of my earlier coaches probably didn't have really the same sort of style of coaching that I like to deliver. I still learned a lot from those coaches. So I think that what the difference between me and the other coaches in the world, and bearing in mind that currently on the world stage, I'm like one of two female coaches in the world at this level of track sprint cycling, which is quite
Far
rare.
out. Are
Yeah.
you actually?
Yeah, so it's there are more
Trumpet enough, Carly.
well, there are more women coming. So
That's
I definitely
impressive.
thank you. I definitely don't feel so alone anymore. But I do remember, I was pushing an athlete off to ride for the World Championship ride of the women's sprint in Glasgow 2023, and the opposing coach was a male. And we pushed the athletes off. My athlete's up. It's best of three. She's up 1-0. So she had to win this next race to win. And as we're walking off the track, he says to me, "So when are you going to have a baby?" And I just remember thinking to myself, why would you ask that question? But then also, my response was, when my athlete beats yours. So it's just so that the world is. The world, and she went on to win, by the way. The world is still quite old school,
Excellent.
I would say. Yeah. And so again, the difference between my coaching, I guess, on reflection of this, one of the bits of feedback I got about my interview for the Great British Role was that the panel really felt that I had a strong vision and a strong philosophy, and that I had a plan that followed behind that. Because one of the things I see done a lot is coaches having a philosophy, but it's really hard to live a philosophy because some of the things within the philosophy are quite difficult. So if I take the idea of teaching, which is part of one of my core coaching philosophy principles, it means that there are really sometimes where I want the athlete to actually fail, and that can be really quite uncomfortable because you want the athletes to be successful, but I know that in them maybe failing or, being able to have a learning experience, that they'll actually grow and be better for it. And so creating safe environments
100%.
for them to be able to fail is really important. And that's maybe an example of how I might differ a little bit from, a traditional coach, I think.
I love that. I mean, failure in my family, when we sit down, I'm like, what have you failed at today? And if they're like, nothing, I'm like, well, what have you done with your day? If there has been, have you just sat and not existed? Have you not participated in anything? The failure is everything. The deconstruction, failure on its own, useless, toxic, if it's not well supported. Because we get into our own heads, don't we? But the second that we normalize failure as the springboard to success, not only do we begin to look at the little, what's the difference that makes the difference, but when we get into the stories, because this is what I tend to find when I'm looking at failures, 9 times out of 10, there is a belief, there is a story, there is an internal program that's going through somebody's head that is really showing physically, and it's limiting them. And when you're able to kind of recognize that self-limiting belief, work with it, and then use that failure to be able to stagger progressive change, that's when we see the magic happen. And do you reckon that fits with you?
As in, do I apply the same thing for myself?
Or with yourself, or with the teams? Is it not so much, is it that one level deeper? We're not just looking at the physical, that didn't work because of that, but actually what's going on inside your head?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I've always been really interested in psychology, and I've always worked with a performance psychologist. And I am I really want to understand why and how the brain works. And I actually think that the key to unlocking the potential of a lot of my athletes is them having a high degree of self-awareness. So it's all in the head, really.
Yeah.
The physical training, everybody trains hard at this level. And so you can almost be guaranteed that when everybody turns up at the Olympics, everyone's done, around about the same kind of training, probably done around about the same amount of laps on the track. And actually it's how well you've prepared, how psychologically ready you are, how well you can cope with stress, pressure, anxiety, like how well you can keep your process under pressure, just like all of those things actually make the difference. And then alongside of that is like all of the things about the human. So how is the human presenting? So it's not just are they self-aware and are they training hard, but like, is this person actually thriving right now? And there are times when they're not,
Yeah.
whether that's, we've just had in Australia, the program's relocated from South Australia to Queensland, and that's been, a big shift for some athletes. They've had to relocate their whole lives up here, and that takes a bit of time to adjust to. So,
Yeah.
making sure that you allow them space to adjust and things like that.
That's something you also experience. And another reason why I'm always so interested in your approach, you also are part of the wider military family. You also are moved away from your support system, your networks, your immediate family. You also are raising a small family, working at the top level without that support system. So yes, you're able to support and give that to your team, but I would like to know, how do you, because I watch this, how are you still able to give to everybody else when you're doing it literally single-handedly? Like the whole thing single-handedly. I don't think you even use childcare. Like you
No.
like external, you just like build things brick by brick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I probably need to start back at in Great Britain. So while I was in Great Britain, I had a bit of a really big dilemma, right? Because we got a year out from the games, and my husband, Kevin, got and enlisted into the military. And at that point in time, we'd had a lot of issues with getting him a visa, and we were spending a lot of time away from each other. And
The Australian military.
yes, the Australian military. And so, like, I had to. It's not how we imagine things going over there. Like, we were committed to living there. We were committed to setting up a bit of a life there. And then all of a sudden, like, that idea of what we wanted just wasn't happening. And he was quite unhappy. And whereas I was thriving, I was loving the job. I actually really enjoyed living in Manchester, which is probably a weird thing to say. I liked living in Manchester. I liked being so close to Europe. I was really, really, really enjoying it. But one of the things that got me was a lot of the feedback that I got early on in my time there was like, you need to take a break, you need to slow down, you need to make sure that you're not burning yourself out. And I didn't necessarily notice any signs of burnout in myself because I was so enthusiastic and really enjoying the job. But one day I was literally rushing between completing a track session with my athletes and then going to the UKSI, which is the United Kingdom Sports Institute, like highest level of coaching course. And I turned up and they were completing like this role play, and the role play was between two people. They were a couple, and one was involved in high performance sport, and the other one, was just working a 9 to 5 job, pretty standard kind of a job. And every year the person working the normal job would say, look, I just really want you to be present. Like, can you be home? Can you come and be a part of our family and our life? And, what's this thing that we're working towards?
Yeah.
And the person in high performance sports, like, yeah, just after the next event. And then it would become, oh, just after the next one. And there was just always this sense for me that I was just like, I'll spend more time with Kevin after this thing, and I'll just do this thing. And then, we'll have a baby after this event. And I sat there and I watched that and I thought, oh, that's me. And then probably the thing that like hit home the hardest was then we broke out into small groups, and I was talking to some of the coaches, and they were literally saying things, yeah, like, I'm on my third marriage, and yeah, this is exactly me. Like, life's just not working. And I just thought that I don't want to do that. Like, I want to, if I am as a coach want to care about the people that I'm working with, I have to care about myself as well. And so I made the decision to return home to Australia just before Paris, which was really difficult because I had to watch my team go on to win gold and not be a part of it. And on the flip side, come home and see Kevin starting to really thrive, and then, me being back home, and whilst not, like you say, in my environment around like my family, in Australia, in a familiar place and starting to think about having a family, which is something that Kevin and I really wanted. And we have welcomed our son Lucius into the world last year, which has been a really great experience for us both.
Amazing. It's wild. And there's so many commonalities between that high performance sacrificing, also to quite a lot of military life, being the military spouse, I know it well, but also to business. That this is what I see constantly when you're working within military communities, or you're working with C-suites or like entrepreneurs. It's that same mentality. I've just got to do X, Y, and Z. Got to do this, and you can become really irritated by people asking you to slow down and stop. It's like, but I'm building this for like you, or I'm building it so I can achieve like whatever the validation is. And I sit here, and as you said that story, I was like, oh, that would have like got me as well, because I'm very tunnel visioned in my work, and the ability to pull out of that is, I'm going to say, an unhinged level of restraint, really, Carl. I don't know how many people would be able to actually take that step to say, no, I know that I'm
Yeah.
close, but I'm leaving it.
Yeah. And a lot of, I
Wow.
had a couple of people actually say to me, like, you're crazy. Like, this team is going to go on and win an Olympic gold medal. And I thought, yeah, and you know what? Part of my coaching philosophy is making them the CEOs of their own career, and they don't need me to do it because I've coached them well enough. And so, like, I think I could walk away
Amazing.
because I felt like I had, even though I really feel like I had not finished the job, I had done the job to a good enough standard that I was pretty confident that they could go away and they're going to be successful, with or without me. And my part of my coaching philosophy is also that I'll go to the Olympics and I will do no coaching at all. Because if I have to coach at the Olympics and I feel that I failed, I haven't taught them well enough to be able to withstand the pressures and the anxiety and the stress and the decisions that you've got to make at that level. And so, I often hear a lot of coaches say, the Olympics is the most stressful event of the year. And I just think, no, it should be the easiest and the most simplest event of a
Yeah.
cycle, because you're working to build your athletes into this one final package there, and then you just got to let them be, because we can't do anything more at that point. You can't. The work's done. Whatever's going to be is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like such the ego, you're able to separate yourself from your ego, is what I hear from that point. But also, it does fit into your overarching ethos of developing excellent humans and the holistic side. You always, when we discuss work, life, whatever it could be, you care about the human experience, not the success experience. And the amount of individuals I have met in high performing sports, who the exchange has been massive. So they might have had like the shiny medals, they might have had the success and the glory, but there has come at a cost. There has been like a physical problem that they have developed because of that. And do you think that there is a way to develop top level high performing athletes that doesn't involve them being broken at the end of it,
Yeah, I
like
think so.
physically?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think the thing that is such a fine balance, right? Because winning is actually exceptionally hard, and not many people do win, right? And every athlete you work with wants to win. And so it's like, okay, I often sort of sit them down and say, okay, if you want to win, this is the things that you have to do. And this, like, it's hard stuff. Like, I'm talking, weighing your food every day. It's a 24-hour, 7-day a week job. You have to have
Yeah.
skin pulse done all the time. You've got to turn up and do every effort with that same intensity, like, all the time. Like, it is constant. But on the same side, I know that you can't do that bit well if you're also not looking after the human that presents to you. So I have a really interesting group at the moment with my Australian team where I've got one athlete who is, quite a high performer already. She has all of the skills and things around her to help her be successful, but I think she finds the balance a little bit more difficult. Whereas I've got these other younger athletes who haven't quite learned all those skills, who probably have like a good balance in life, but don't quite have the intensity that they need to really progress on. So I'm having to try and help those two different groups meet in the middle. And at the same time, for myself, I'm a new mother. I still see and understand that being a high performance coach comes at some cost at some point. And so making sure that I'm looking after myself as well, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to work with you, because I think my self-awareness is quite high, and definitely before I went on maternity leave, I could see that it wasn't sustainable for me. And I could see I don't know if I could be a coach and a mother at the same time, particularly with the response that I was having to my job. And so having started the work that I've been doing with you, I can see some of that starting to filter into how I'm working with my athletes as well.
Which is awesome. And how have you had to alter your approach? If you could maybe try and reframe that question. There's the high performance that got you to where you are today, and then there's the high performance that you actually need to thrive in this next evolution of you. Mm-hmm. And what's the difference?
I think it really clicked with me, probably one of our last sessions that we did, where I think I was saying to you, like, I haven't exercised in like 2 months. And like that for me is like quite a bad thing. Like I need to exercise to not be cranky, but we've moved houses. Lucie has just started walking. Breastfeeding starting to sort of peter out, and I can feel like hormones are changing. And you said to me, like, just remember, like, everything is a stage in life. And so just because, it's not how I want it to look right now, it doesn't mean that it's not going to get back to where I need it to get back to. And so then prioritizing some things within my workspace has really helped. So for example, you had me do an exercise where I had to like write a list of things that like have to do to get my job done, things that I need to do, but they're sort of not like important or non-important. And then there's like the not important things. So each week I just start out my week looking at my calendar, like what are the things that I actually really need to do this week that are like non-negotiable, and I prioritize those. What are the things that I want to work on that bring me joy, creative things, and changing the time of the day that I'd usually do those. So I'd leave that right to the end of my days, whereas I try and put that at the start of my days now, where I'm a bit more fresh and I've got the capacity and the space to be able to think about it in a critical way, in a creative way. And then like probably the most like groundbreaking thing for me is like dropping the things that I just don't need to do. And that's probably been the big difference for me. Is I think I felt when I came back into Australia that I really wanted to influence the system more holistically than maybe what I'm currently going about it, but I can't do everything. And so I've just had to really prioritize what I can do right now. And that is just helping my athletes pretty much solely to be the best that they can be, and influencing here and there some of the other systemic things. But I'm just not in a stage of life where I can do more than what I'm currently doing.
Yeah. And such an interesting like idea then when you were saying maybe if it's filtered in the wrong way, please do correct me. But you wanted to come in and you wanted like this impact to be like, bang, present, let's go. But I genuinely, particularly in today's market, I really believe that your approach and the approach that we've been like together working towards, that is the approach of the big like slap in the face. Like this is the new way of approaching high performance and work, because everybody else is hustling faster and faster and faster, harder and harder and harder. We're seeing the sickness, we're seeing the burnout, we're seeing all of those symptoms. And it feels, even when you have the knowledge, that to be heard, you've got to go along, you've got to be bigger than the noise, the stress, and the overwhelm that we're seeing around it. It's like so that we can get on top of it. But that's just really classic. The loudest nervous system in the room, the most dysregulated person or system is pulling us in, and we're thinking, I've got to meet them with their energy to get heard. But we're just then part of the noise. And we are just ticking a box. But the approach that you have taken, all of this, like, okay, how am I working smarter, not harder? How am I allowing myself to work in a way that suits my rhythms now? That's going to give me capacity for the future. How am I able to stay to look after myself and be as regulated as I can? It feels small because the energy is less chaotic. So it can feel less impactful, but actually that's the stuff that changes everything, because then that's the energy that you take into all of those spaces, and people feel that and they have that sense of security and safety. So they want to, and then they pick up those habits like you were saying, when you watched people and you just pick up the things that you needed. So I'm such a huge advocate in the slowness, and slowness is the wrong word. This more strategic, regulated response is actually the response that changes systems, but it just doesn't feel loud, and that can feel scary.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that. And I think, like, since I've become a coach, I've been involved in like quite a few different like leadership courses, which definitely learned things. But those courses tend to teach like leadership skills, how to influence up, things that I think I already like intrinsically knew how to do. Whereas one of the things that I think like
Yeah.
differentiates your program from like just traditional leadership courses is that like you're helping me to learn how to function and regulate myself. And that is something that I was struggling to do in the system because, you know, I had been labeled things like being was an aggravator or something like that, and like people were like taking my energy as being a bit angry because I was frustrated with like not being able to, you know,
Yeah.
get the change that I wanted. Whereas instead of like trying to, you know, work on these skills and, you know, create connections and influence stuff, all I've just done is done, okay, this is not working. How can I help myself first before I then start to look externally? And so one of the things I've like enjoyed quite a lot, being quite a logical, data driven person, is the biometrics. And one of the things that I've learned
Yeah.
through wearing the biometrics is, you know, it probably comes as no surprise to those people who are parents, but I haven't slept through the night in 13 months, having a baby. And
Yes.
being an
That's so
athlete,
hard.
where you know, as an athlete, I was like, even when I retire, you know, I was 9 hours every night, blackest room that you can possibly have, earplugs in. If there was a little red
Yeah.
light from the TV, I'd like take it up. Like I just had to have the perfect sleep environment. And now I'm just like, there
Yeah.
could be a window open. You know, Lucius could be
Yeah.
snoring. It's okay. But I had this idea in my mind that my sleep was really bad because it's quite broken. And then we put the biometrics on and we went through our first session and you're like, your sleep's great. What? And so just like I've let go of that like stress around my sleep not being good, because actually I am able to get into a state where I can recover quite quickly, even though my sleep is broken, which is why I'm able to still function quite high during the day. And, you know, in
Yeah.
reflection, like when you keep the log and everything with the biometrics, like I think on reflection, one of the things that helps my sleep be quite good is I tend to have quite a good like routine, like coming down before I go into sleep. You know, where, you know, not on
Yeah.
screens, breastfeeding Lucius. You know, like everything's just like really quiet, and so I have time to just like let my central nervous system just go, like just relax, and then I can get into my sleep. So
Yeah.
that's been like quite helpful because I did worry that my sleep was not good.
Yeah. And there we go. And these are the things that I just love to hear. So I'm so grateful these things are useful for you. And I think what I love about the data, for those of you who don't know, Carly wears it's like some biotech, and what it does is it will track how her nervous system is responding to her kind of day-to-day actions over a length of time. And then from those results, we are able to see how well she is just dealing with like life's stresses. And we can also see the things that trigger really high levels of like unregulated stress, what allows her body to enter a recovery state. So there's a difference between a rested and a recovered state. So you could sleep for 10 hours, but that doesn't mean that the sleep was good. So sleep is always my growth area, Carly. It's awful. My sleep is trash. Working on it. So I could sleep for hours, but the quality, so like what Carly is saying there, if she has great sleep, her body really knows how to switch off. So her body is very well trained to be able to literally flip branches of the nervous system. So she enters something called the parasympathetic, so this recovery state, so her body can heal really effectively. So she may have 5 hours of sleep, but they are like insane quality. And it might be slightly broken, but the second she rests again, bang, her body goes in. And that data is just so important, because the other thing that you can do with that, which we have began looking at, is we can learn skills, like body-based skills, to be able to like train the body to access these states quicker. So you were saying, Carly, like the traditional leadership models, yeah, they're useful, like to learn a strategy or a technique. But if you've got a mental barrier that stops you from speaking, or if you're pissed off with a system, and so you're like meeting the system with the energy it's giving you, which is what happens, you get nowhere, do you? So when we learn these tools, it's actually allowing us to like be ahead of our responses, so that we're more in control of every situation, instead of us just trying to be as loud as we can until we get heard. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. I think that it's been quite like it's changed. Like I said to you before I went on maternity leave, I wasn't sure whether I could be a coach and a mum, or just even a coach without being the mum. It feels more achievable now because I'm not. I can anticipate the things that might cause stress. I have more skills now about how I might regulate that stress. And it's weird because as an athlete, like I think I got really good at understanding the stress that you need to respond to as an athlete. And I had some of this, I was, without knowing what I was doing some of the things that you've sort of already taught me now about how I can, use that in my leadership, things like breathing and just, breaking multitasking and like just stuff like that, stuff that is common sense stuff, but you don't realize that you're doing it and you don't know the impact it has on you until you have a look at the actual data. And so and it's just really small things. The latest thing that we've been working on, and this is something that I have really struggled to do since particularly becoming a mum, is just like cultivating a bit of joy in my day-to-day life. So I think you call it savoring. So I've got to do something each day where I've got to actually like savor the moment, which is actually probably an act of mindfulness, but it's not labeled that. And it's not, you don't have to like dedicate a whole, I don't know, hour to it. It's just like, no, when you sit down and you do this regular thing you do each day, like just actually be there, taste your tea, go out in the sunshine, feel the sun. It only has to be like those little moments, but those little moments, I feel what it feels like to me is it feels like a kick. It kicks me into that like recovery state, gives me that access to the parasympathetic nervous system, and then I can go back into whatever the thing is that is a little bit stressful, and learning with you that some stress is actually good, and we need stress because that's how you become a high performer. So I've really just enjoyed understanding how I respond and the things that I can do to help me be better. When, like, in all honesty, being a mum and a coach, I feel like I am working in a depleted state a lot of the time, but I'm managing to still function.
So you function so well, and I want to, I know we're going to have to wrap up soon, but that idea of like the savoring and the joy, I find it so, because people think it's ridiculous. They're like, this is hippie woo woo. Like, we're in this serious business. It's a serious business of life. It's a serious business of high performance. It's a serious business of like working at a corporate level. And it's like, all of that seriousness and that stress, all it does, like when we understand how our brain works in a nervous system now, all it does is narrow thinking and make us stupider and make us see everything as threat. And it's like society at large has trained us to minimize and ridicule the actual techniques that help us perform exceptionally. So not only with the savoring and the joy, we know when we're stressed out. This morning, I like cried to Chris, like, I'm so overwhelmed, there's so much to do, and and I'd gone into rumination and I was telling myself stupid stories. And he was like, you need to stop fannying and just take some action. And I was like, you're correct, because my brain, because I was so stressed out, my brain had closed down its perception and I was stuck in the problem. So all my brain was giving me was, because the brain is wired and the body is wired. So when we think something or see something or perceive it, instead of actually seeing what is going on around us, it will search past memories and find the one most linked to how we're feeling. So it will just pull information to reinforce the current physical state and the thoughts. So I was getting like feeling all upset. And so my brain was just, yeah, remember this time you fucked up, or remember this time that it went wrong, or remember that time that you couldn't do something, or whatever it could be. And my brain was just giving me evidence of why I couldn't be. And I was trying to think my way out of this hole. And I was like 3 days deep. And then Chris like made me laugh. He was like, you need to stop being a fanny and like stop having a pity party and get on with it. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I do. And that's how most people live, like chronic stress, overwhelm, tunnel vision. The brain is just reinforcing the fear that they have. But with the savoring, with the cultivating joy, not only do we rewire the brain to be, and like literally will get heavier and bigger. Not only are we rewiring it to notice more and to feel more joy, but it also will flip across the networks of the brain that we're using. So we are able to problem solve better. We are able to be more strategic, more creative. We are able to be more pro-social. So one, it helps us recover better, but it also makes us strategic because it allows us to access all of the brain networks to fix shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the powerful piece that high performers miss. Like it is the critical skill to be developed.
Yeah. And it's like you say, it's hard when you're in that tunnel vision and you're like you can't see broader. But I think the thing that like I've like enjoyed about working with you is that like again in traditional courses it's like practice mindfulness and meditate, and it's like, well, when did I fit that into my time, like my day? Like I just actually feel like I don't have the capacity for that. And so you're not saying go and do all these extra things. You're saying hit your normal routine, but like just spend some time being really present in what you're doing. So every day I have my tea when I wake up. I try and make it like I try and spend a few minutes just like feeling the cup, drinking my tea, and it's the same as what I would normally do, but I'm just being a bit more intentional about it. And so then I'm already starting my day in a much better way than like previously. I'd be like drinking my tea, thinking I've got to do this, and this, and that. Like this has got to happen. I've got to do this other thing, and Lucie's has got to go here. And it's like, how can you actually be productive when you're in that space? Taking a couple of minutes, like even be regularly through the day
to be present.
Yeah, to be present and just like reset the body so that you can get out of that state, so that you can be more strategic and think a bit more clearer. And like I am trying to do that with my athletes as well. Like I had an athlete the other day who didn't have a good effort, and I just said, look, I just want you to go outside for a few minutes. Go away. Don't take your phone. Just go outside.
Yeah.
Notice the trees. Come back in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that it maybe like revolutionized her, but she certainly came in looking like she wasn't so tense. She wasn't looking so I think I could tell she was in her mind. She was thinking about letting the team down, and she was better from then on. And so just those little skills, just giving those little skills to people is just really helpful.
It is. And it's not rocket science.
Mm.
And that's the problem. People think that the solution needs to be this really big, complex, multifaceted thing. But it's literally not. It's learning to come home to yourself. But that's a very scary thing to do because society has told us that we're too grown up for that. And the micro moments are so important because we don't want to keep piling things on. Meditation, great, amazing. We love it. It has many benefits. Breathwork, again, amazing. But also, these aren't the right techniques for some people.
Mm-hmm.
If you have got somebody who is chronically dysregulated on your team, maybe they've got a trauma background or something like that, and then we are directing somebody to the breath or to stillness, that can be really triggering for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then they feel like they're the problem. What do you mean focus on my breath? I can't focus on my breath. Like there are different approaches for people. Tools that we've done exteroception when we ground external to the body first.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come back into these approach, and that's what I do with everybody. But again, it's working with the human in mind instead of this blanket approach. But I know I'm talking to the converted. It's like you are always like taking things on, adapting it, tracking it with the data, seeing what fits and what works. And the data is just a useful signpost. It's not gospel,
Yeah.
but it is useful, particularly if you are able to match up. I did this technique here and I see this in my recording.
Mm-hmm.
Or when I get my results, I can see my sleep is amazing. So I had one client, really awful sleep, just life that week. And so we saw that and had their body's ability to switch. But the stress recovery had improved massively. So
Mm-hmm.
you could tell that the practices this person had been putting into having greater awareness, working with the body, was actually showing in the nervous system. Like she was able to like pull herself back far greater than she had over the following 6 months. And I think that's the key to high performance. Nothing, it doesn't all have to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but we can build so much capacity by just reframing the approach.
Well, I mean, I think you probably just summed it up right, like really well just there. Like high performance is
Yeah.
being able to regulate in a dysregulated environment.
Yeah. 100%. That's it. Awesome. Carls, I could talk to you. There's about 50,000 questions I have got in my head about. I feel like I haven't done you a good enough service. There's so many things that we could be discussing that would just be incredible for people to listen to. We don't have time for that now. I do think you should start your own podcast, and you should chunk it into like life stage chapters so that we can all kind of get your greatness. But I'll call it a day for now. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and coming to talk and share your incredible wisdom and your just incredible approach as well to high performance. It really is excellent.
Oh, thank you. Well, I couldn't be, I guess, as high performing without these skills. So thank you for helping me.
You're the best. Awesome. Thank you, Carl. And I will speak to you soon.
Bye.